Hellenistic philosophy marked a significant shift in emphasis from the metaphysical and cosmological concerns of earlier Greek philosophers like Plato and Aristotle to a more practical focus on ethics. While Plato and Aristotle certainly addressed ethical questions, their primary focus was often on broader issues such as the nature of reality, the cosmos, and the ideal state. Hellenistic philosophers, on the other hand, were primarily concerned with how individuals could achieve a good and fulfilling life in a world that was undergoing rapid social and political change. This focus on ethics stemmed in part from the turbulent times in which these philosophers lived. The collapse of the Greek city-states and the rise of large empires created a sense of instability and uncertainty. Individuals were no longer as closely tied to their local communities, and traditional sources of authority and meaning were being questioned. In this context, philosophy became a source of personal guidance and solace, offering practical advice on how to navigate the challenges of life and achieve inner peace. The ethical systems developed by Hellenistic philosophers sought to provide concrete answers to questions about how to live virtuously, how to achieve happiness, and how to cope with suffering and adversity. They explored various approaches to these questions, emphasizing different values and practices. For example, Stoics emphasized virtue as the sole good and advocated for living in accordance with nature and reason, while Epicureans emphasized the pursuit of pleasure, understood as tranquility and freedom from pain, as the greatest good. This practical focus on ethics made Hellenistic philosophy accessible to a wider audience than the more abstract and theoretical philosophies of earlier periods. It offered a framework for living a meaningful life regardless of one's social status or political circumstances. This emphasis on practical ethics continues to resonate with people today, as many of the questions and challenges addressed by Hellenistic philosophers remain relevant to contemporary life. The Hellenistic period witnessed a growing emphasis on individualism, a trend reflected in the philosophical movements of the time. The decline of the city-state as a primary focus of political and social life led to greater emphasis on the individual's inner world and their personal search for meaning and purpose. Philosophers explored how individuals could find fulfillment and happiness independently of their social and political affiliations. This emphasis on individualism did not mean a complete rejection of social life. Rather, it represented a shift in focus from the collective to the individual's experience within the larger world. Philosophers explored the nature of the self, the importance of self-knowledge, and the development of inner resilience and independence. They sought to provide individuals with the tools to navigate the challenges of life and find meaning in a world that was becoming increasingly complex and impersonal. This focus on the individual is evident in the ethical systems developed by the different Hellenistic schools. Stoicism emphasized the importance of self-control, reason, and virtue as a path to happiness, regardless of external circumstances. Epicureanism focused on the individual's pursuit of pleasure, understood as tranquility and freedom from pain. Both schools emphasized the importance of inner peace and self-sufficiency as key components of a fulfilling life. The emphasis on individualism in Hellenistic philosophy reflects a broader cultural shift towards a more cosmopolitan and less localized worldview. As individuals increasingly interacted with people from different backgrounds and cultures, they began to develop a stronger sense of their own individual identity, separate from their traditional social and political roles. This emphasis on individualism continues to be a significant aspect of Western thought and culture. The Hellenistic period was characterized by increased interaction and exchange between different cultures and peoples, a phenomenon known as cosmopolitanism. The conquests of Alexander the Great had opened up vast new territories to Greek influence, leading to the blending of Greek culture with the cultures of the Near East, Egypt, and other regions. This cultural exchange had a profound impact on Hellenistic philosophy, leading to a broadening of perspectives and the incorporation of diverse ideas. This cosmopolitanism is evident in the philosophical schools that emerged during this period. Philosophers drew upon a wide range of traditions, incorporating elements from Eastern religions, Egyptian mythology, and other cultural influences. This cross-fertilization of ideas led to the development of new and innovative philosophical systems that were more inclusive and adaptive to a diverse world. The cosmopolitan nature of the Hellenistic world also contributed to the emphasis on individualism. As individuals interacted with people from different backgrounds, they were forced to confront different perspectives and ways of life. This led to a greater awareness of cultural differences and a stronger sense of individual identity, separate from traditional social and political roles. This broader perspective is reflected in the ethical concerns of Hellenistic philosophers. They address questions of how to live a good life, not within just a specific city-state, but within a larger interconnected world. They emphasized universal values such as reason, virtue, and human dignity, which transcended cultural boundaries. This cosmopolitan outlook helped to shape the development of Western thought and continues to be relevant in our increasingly globalized world. Hellenistic schools of philosophy distinguish themselves by their systematic approach to philosophical inquiry. They aimed to develop comprehensive systems of thought that addressed a wide range of topics, which included logic, physics, and ethics. These systems were designed to provide a complete framework for understanding reality and living a fulfilling life. This systematic approach involved developing clear and consistent principles, defining key concepts, and constructing local arguments to support their claims. Philosophers sought to create a coherent and internally consistent worldview that could provide answers to fundamental questions about the nature of existence, the purpose of life, and the path to happiness. This emphasis on systematic thinking contributed to the development of philosophical methodology and laid the groundwork for later philosophical and scientific inquiry. Stoicism, which was founded by Zeno of Citium in Athens around 380 BC, became one of the most influential philosophical schools in the Hellenistic and Roman worlds. At its core, Stoicism emphasizes virtue as the only true good. External factors like wealth, health, or reputation are considered indifferent, meaning they are neither good nor bad in themselves, but rather provide the material for us to exercise virtue. This focus on inner virtue allowed Stoics to maintain tranquility and equanimity even in the face of adversity. A central tenet of Stoicism is the distinction between what we can and cannot control. Stoics believe that we have complete control over our thoughts and actions and our internal responses to external events. However, external events themselves, such as illness, loss, or misfortune, are beyond our control. Therefore, the wise person focuses their energy on cultivating virtue and managing their inner world, accepting what they cannot change with equanimity. This acceptance is not passive resignation, but rather an active affirmation of the natural order of the universe. Key figures like Epictetus, a former slave, Seneca, a Roman statesman and playwright, and Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor, further developed and popularized Stoic ideas. Epictetus emphasized the importance of focusing on what is within our power and accepting what is not. Seneca wrote extensively on ethics, offering practical advice on how to live a virtuous and fulfilling life. Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, a personal journal, provides a profound insight into the Stoic mindset and offers timeless wisdom on how to deal with adversity and live a virtuous life. Epicureanism was founded in the late 4th century BCE and advocated for the pursuit of pleasure as the greatest good. However, this is not a hedonistic pursuit of fleeting sensual gratification. Epicureans understood pleasure as ataraxia, which is tranquility or freedom from disturbance, and aponia, absence of pain. They believe that true happiness comes from minimizing pain and maximizing tranquility, achieved through prudence, moderation, and the cultivation of simple joys. Epicurean philosophy emphasized the importance of understanding the natural world to dispel fears and anxieties, especially the fear of death and the intervention of gods in human affairs. They adopted a materialistic view of the universe, believing that everything is composed of atoms and that death is simply the dissolution of these atoms, not a transition to an afterlife. This understanding helped to alleviate the fear of death and allowed Epicureans to focus on living fully in the present moment. Friendship played a central role in Epicurean ethics. They believed that strong bonds with friends provided security, support, and companionship, which are essential for achieving a tranquil and fulfilling life. They emphasized living a moderate life, avoiding excessive indulgence, and seeking simple pleasures, such as good conversation, good food, and the beauty of nature. Epicureanism was not a philosophy of reckless indulgence, but rather a practical guide to achieving lasting happiness through moderation and tranquility. Skepticism, as a Hellenistic philosophical school, took a critical stance on the possibility of attaining certain knowledge. Pyrrho of Elis, is considered the founder of Pyrrhonism, the most prominent form of Hellenistic skepticism. Skeptics argue that our senses and reasoning processes are unreliable, leading to contradictory and inconclusive judgments. They advocate for the suspension of judgment on most matters, recognizing the limitations of human understanding. Skepticism is not about denying the existence of reality, but rather about acknowledging the limitations of our ability to know it with certainty. Skeptics argued that our perceptions are subjective and influenced by various factors, making it difficult to arrive at objective truths. They also point out the limitations of reasoning, demonstrating how arguments could be constructed to support opposing viewpoints. Sextus Empiricus, a later skeptic philosopher, systematized and documented the arguments of the skeptical school. His writings provided a detailed account of the skeptical methods for inducing the suspension of judgment, such as the tropes or modes of skepticism, which highlights the relativity of perception and the limitations of human judgment. The goal of skepticism was not to promote nihilism or inaction, but rather to achieve tranquility by freeing oneself from the dogmatic pursuit of certainty. Cynicism continued to be a significant influence during this era. Cynics rejected conventional social values, wealth, power, and social norms, believing that these external factors were obstacles to true happiness and virtue. They advocated for a simple life lived in accordance with nature, free from artificial constraints and dependencies. Diogenes, the most famous cynic, exemplified this philosophy through his unconventional lifestyle. He lived in a barrel, rejected social conventions, and openly criticized the hypocrisy and corruption of society. He believed that true happiness comes from self-sufficiency, freedom from desires, and living in accordance with nature. His actions and pronouncements, often shocking and provocative, were intended to challenge conventional thinking and expose the folly of pursuing wealth and status. Cynicism emphasized self-sufficiency, the ability to live independently without reliance on external factors. Cynics believed that true freedom comes from detaching oneself from material possessions, social status, and other external dependencies, and by living a simple life and rejecting conventional values, they sought to achieve a state of inner peace and freedom from anxiety. Hellenistic philosophy had a profound and lasting impact on Western thought. Stoicism, with its emphasis on virtue, reason, and acceptance of what we cannot control, resonated deeply with Roman thinkers and statesmen, influencing Roman law, ethics, and political thought. Figures like Cicero, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius helped to popularize Stoic ideas throughout the Roman Empire. Epicureanism, though often misunderstood as a philosophy of hedonistic indulgence, also had a significant influence. Its emphasis on tranquility, friendship, and the pursuit of simple joys continued to be studied and debated throughout the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. In modern times, Epicurean ideas have contributed to discussions about happiness, well-being, and the importance of community. Skepticism's focus on the limitations of human knowledge and the importance of critical thinking has had a lasting impact on the study of knowledge and scientific methodology. This emphasis on questioning assumptions and suspending judgment continues to be relevant in contemporary discussions about truth, evidence, and the nature of belief. The influence of cynicism, with its emphasis on simple living, self-sufficiency, and rejection of social conventions, can be seen in various counterculture movements throughout history. Its emphasis on individual freedom and authenticity continues to resonate with those who challenge societal norms and seek a more meaningful way of life. The legacy of Hellenistic philosophy continues to inform our understanding of ethics, happiness, and the human condition. The ideas of Hellenistic philosophy, especially Stoicism and Epicureanism, continued to be studied and debated throughout the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. They experienced a revival in modern times, with Stoicism in particular gaining renewed popularity as a practical philosophy for dealing with stress, anxiety, and adversity. Hellenistic philosophy represents a significant period in the history of Western thought, characterized by a focus on ethics, individualism, and the development of comprehensive systems for living a good life. The major schools of Stoicism, Epicureanism, Skepticism, and Cynicism offer diverse perspectives on how to achieve happiness, tranquility, and virtue in a changing world, and their ideas continue to resonate with people today.